Welcome to Sarder TV, an idea-sharing platform founded by Russell Sarder, author, investor, and CEO of Netcom Learning. I'm Lindsay Christian, and I'm so excited to interview Michelle Gadsden Williams. She's the author of The Climb, taking every step with conviction, courage, and calculated risk to achieve a thriving career and a successful life. Today, May 1st, 2019, happens to be the one-year anniversary since the book was published. So what an appropriate time to have this conversation. So thank you for joining us, Michelle.
Thanks for having me.
We are so happy to have you here at Sarder TV. Who is Michelle Gadsden Williams? What's your background like? How would you define your personal brand?
Who is Michelle Gadsden Williams? That's a loaded question. She is an individual who genuinely cares about people, who has passion around helping women in particular, but most people, the next generation of leaders, realize their potential. She's creative. She likes to laugh. Some even say she's funny, but incredibly passionate about healthcare, the arts, a lot of things. So yeah, she's a busy lady.
A lot of what you just described as the part of your personal brand really, I think, translates well into your careers. Miss Corporate America. I say Miss Corporate America. You led a successful 20-plus career in corporate America.
Yes.
What was the key to your ascension and sustainability?
Oh, I'd say it was a couple of things. Like most people, I'm just incredibly driven in terms of what my North Star was for myself, both personally and professionally. So I had a goal, and it was all about achieving that goal by any means necessary. So a lot of the things that I would attribute to the success and my ascension have everything to do with my fearlessness, my eagerness to learn and to be open to new and different, my drive for innovation and creativity, and just, I'd say, my commitment to just doing great work every single day, but making a difference in the lives of others and not necessarily focusing on myself.
And you make a difference in the lives of others working in diversity and inclusion.
Yes.
That passion for others and helping others is evident in your work there. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yes. So I have the privilege of working for Ascension, and if you're not familiar, we are one of the world's largest professional services firms with close to 500,000 employees worldwide.
It's huge.
It is huge. And so I joined the firm 2 years ago by way of an executive search firm. At the time, I think you're aware that I was pursuing entrepreneurial ventures.
Yes.
And having a great time with my husband, who's my business partner, doing wonderful things. And I had my consultancy practice and other things happening. And then the phone rang via an executive search firm who told me that there's this wonderful company that's interested in having a conversation. And I said yes. I met with Julie Sweet, our CEO for North America, Ellen Shook, our CHRO for North America, globally. And I just enjoyed what they had to say about this work that I've been leading in a number of companies for so many years. It was everything that I wanted to have in a true Chief Diversity Officer role. So all of the ducks lined up and pointed due east, and it made all the sense in the world to me. If I were going to go back in-house, everything had to be in its place, and it had to be the right role. And I believe I found that at Ascension.
And the work that you were presented, it had to be impactful.
Yes.
Right? You want it to make a difference.
Exactly. Now, Accenture is incredibly diversity mature, so they have had wonderful diversity practices in place for many years prior to my coming on board. So to pick up the mantle and to run with it and to take things to a whole nother level was extremely appealing to me. And to do this work that I've done in a number of other industries, this industry I didn't know much about, but I wanted to learn more about it. So as a chief diversity officer, sometimes you have to move out of an organization in order to stretch and grow as a professional. So I've done this work in consumer goods, in big pharma, financial services, and now professional services, and I also had my entrepreneurial stint. So this was the next most logical step.
This made sense.
for
Well,
me.
let's segue back to your entrepreneurial venture, Breakers LLC.
Yes.
What inspired you to create that with your husband, David?
Well, again, this work of diversity practice really extends far beyond just my day-to-day in the four walls of where I'm employed. It's who I am as an individual. I'm a woman of color, and my lived experience is very different from other individuals, particularly the majority population. And so whatever business I was going to start had to have that in mind. So I knew that I wanted to start a diversity consultancy practice, and I wanted to help Fortune 500 companies to amplify their diversity strategies. So that was one part of it, but also utilize my uniqueness and my intersectionality of race and gender to have a meaningful conversation with executives who aren't quite there in terms of their understanding about what this work means and the power behind it. Right. So, yeah.
So what exactly does it mean to work in diversity and inclusion? Does this mean that you are helping minorities, various genders, races, find opportunities within Accenture? Just can you be a little bit more specific about what your work entails?
Absolutely. So we are internal strategists that focus on the entire employee life cycle. And what that means is this: we focus on designing and implementing policies, processes to ensure equity, fairness, parity, all of it in terms of every single aspect of the HR cycle. And that it would include recruiting, it would include developing talent, advancement of talent in terms of promotability and so forth, and the retention of talent. So that would be the employee life cycle that I was referring to a few moments ago. So we design a lot of interventions, a lot of programming, yeah, you name it, just around all of those things that an employee would encounter during their time with any organization. So that's really the day in the life of. I mean, that's part of it.
Sure.
A lot of other things that we do, we are executive coaches. So we do a lot of coaching of employees and or executives from employee relations type issues that might occur. If an individual feels as if they're being treated unfairly in some way, and they go to their HR business partner, I might be brought in to have that unbiased viewpoint in terms of the situation and giving counsel to both parties. So we do a lot of work.
Very
So
interesting work.
Problem solvers is a big...
Okay, so
problem solvers, strategists.
Okay,
Yes.
strategists. You talk a lot about, of course, your passion for helping others. And as a woman of color, you tapped into another passion to help elevate women of color.
That's right.
Through your work with Breakers
Yes.
LLC. Talk more about that work.
Absolutely. Well, I saw a need, and based on empirical data and research, women of color, we have not quite permeated that. I call it a concrete ceiling for us, at least.
Yes.
And a
Not glass ceiling,
no,
concrete.
a glass ceiling you can permeate. You can crack it. You can poke a hole through it. There are some things you can get through that matter. A concrete ceiling, however, not so malleable. You can chip away at it, but it's still thick. It's still there, and you know that it's there. So that's how I would describe the two.
Okay.
Yes.
But you want to help really shatter, can you shatter concrete?
No, you can chip away at it.
You can chip away, but you're helping women of color chip away at
away
what
at
may
it.
seem impossible.
Exactly. You can chip away at it, and eventually you'll start to see progress over time, not overnight.
Okay, it's time to transition into the climb as we're talking about chipping away and ascension. At what point did you decide to chronicle your journey, and then we'll dive more into the chapters?
Sure. It was always my intention to write a book at some point in time in my career. It wasn't even a matter of if, it was a matter of when.
And finding the time in your busy
That's
schedule.
exactly right. It was trying to find the time to do it. Because if I were going to write a book, I wanted to be vulnerable, I wanted to be truthful, I wanted it to be...
It's very transparent, too.
Transparent.
All of
so
that,
I
yes.
call what I've written, I've thrown myself under the bus, if you will. I really wanted to unveil the truth about my life and create a narrative that gave you the full story and not the sanitized version of it. I've had a wonderful career, which I love every single aspect of it, but it wasn't easy. And so I really wanted to give the reader a playbook of sorts that would provide them with tools and techniques and insights into my world in terms of the organizations where I've worked and the industries where I've worked and how I was received as a woman and as a woman of color. So the book was written not just for women. The book was written for all individuals, women and men who are allies for women.
Ah.
Yes. So you get a sense of the lived experience of what a woman deals with in the workplace.
Because it's helpful, especially if you're a male employer, to understand the plight of a woman in her role in corporate America and her tribulations, her trials, her experiences.
Exactly.
So it's through the Michelle lens, but certainly written for everyone.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes. And so going back to your original question
Okay.
around climb, the most frequent question that I'm asked is, why climb? Why did you decide to name the book Climb? And I said, when you think about that term, it means to go upward with gradual or continual progress. And when I think about that, that's how I would describe my career. There are some of us who have an easy go of it and who can take the elevator up to the C-suite or whatever level that they're going to or that they aspire to, and others not so much. You have to take the stairs with a backpack and no air conditioning.
Oh, I love that
And
analogy.
so I wanted to, I climbed the stairs. And so the term really spoke volumes about my career trajectory. And I used myself as the protagonist, as the subject, to make salient points about my career, some things I've done well, and some things I didn't do so well.
And when I think of climb, and as I was reading the book, I was visualizing really, as we relate it to like a marathon, your career is really not, not a sprint, it's a marathon.
That's right.
Success doesn't happen overnight.
That's right.
We know Beyonce wasn't made in a day. She is still climbing and, is climbing. But I visualized it in that perspective, that no one can hit that C-suite without a little struggle, without some challenges.
Exactly, and without evolution.
Yeah, and self-discovery as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the things that I pride myself on is I try to self-assess on a regular basis. So at the top of every year, there are several questions that I will ask myself just to do a sanity check. Am I where I'm supposed to be in this life? Am I doing work and serving others? Why do I do what I do on a day-to-day basis? Am I fulfilled at what I'm doing? What behaviors and characteristics and other things am I exerting in order to have the impact that I want to have? And so that self-assessment that you talked about earlier, I take that so seriously. And sometimes you just have to reinvent yourself over time. So the Michelle 3.0 that you see sitting in front of you is not the Michelle of 25 plus years ago. There's been an evolution. And the experiences that I've endured over time have shaped me into the executive that I am today. And so that journey line, as I call it, I'm grateful for every single bump, ebb and flow, every nook and cranny of what's taken place.
Let's start a little bit, rewind a little bit to your upbringing, because it's certainly attributed to the Michelle 3.0 today, and that was your father's work ethic that
Yes.
you spoke so eloquently about. Talk about how Dad, what you saw in Dad and his work ethic growing up that you gleaned from and transitioned into your adulthood years.
Absolutely. So I've learned a lot from both my parents. My mother is an entrepreneur. My father is a retired executive. So I was fortunate enough to have had a role model in the house, well, two. But my father worked in corporate America for many years. And, it's really interesting. Dad really didn't want my sisters and I to pursue a career in corporate America because of all the trials and tribulations that he went through as an African American male in the 60s and 70s and up until the time he retired. It was hard. Mm-hmm. And to see your children go through some semblance of that, he said, if this is what you want to do, I'm supportive, but why not a doctor or
as if
a
that
lawyer?
Were not as challenging.
Exactly. Why not some other, So I've always gravitated to the things that scared me the most. And as they say, if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. Mm. And my aspirations were to be a corporate executive. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be essentially a female version of my dad. And I wanted to travel the world, and I wanted to lead people and learn different skills and different nuances of business and understanding how people make decisions. And so that was really appealing to me and still is.
When you're doing all of that.
Exactly.
Well, you've done that and you are doing everything you just described that Dad did.
Exactly.
His role.
Exactly. So I'd say a lot of what I've done is essentially a replication of his career in a lot of ways. So it's work ethic that I've learned from him. It's stick-to-itiveness. It's daring to just lead with courage and conviction and not allowing individuals to determine my fate and my future, that I would be the architect of all of that myself.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
And it's realizing self, it's knowing thyself.
Exactly. I just had a conversation yesterday with a girlfriend of mine, and she and I were talking about this notion of passion and power and purpose. And
3 P's, those are very strong P's.
Exactly,
yes.
And I wrote about it in the book. And my purpose and my passion are certainly intertwined. Everything that I do, I try to give 150% at it every single day. And anything that I've ever wanted to really accomplish had to do with others, and it really didn't anchor or center around me.
Right.
So when I think about my career and the decisions that I've made by my design, all of it had to do with everyone else. And I put everyone else first, and my needs came last.
Let's talk about your ascension to a C-suite role. You started in corporate America. In which sector was your first full-time?
Consumer goods.
Consumer goods. And then you ultimately ascended to a C-suite role. What do you think got you there?
Now that ascension, that was over time, not over.
Oh, I know.
What got me there? Boy, I'd say performance, strong performance, being extremely crisp and articulate in terms of what my North Star was, and having that conversation with those who I reported to in addition to HR, and making sure that was crystal clear in terms of what I wanted to do and what really was not of interest to me. Having exposure to different lines of business where I was able to determine early on what it is that I wanted to do and what I'd like to do versus not. That helped me to whittle down the spectrum in terms of where I was going to focus my attention and where I really wanted to specialize in. I learned that really early on.
If I want to be CEO of a company, I have desires to do X, Y, Z, but not A, B, C. Is it okay for me to articulate, this is what I want to do, but not really feeling this? Would that deter my ascension?
I don't think so. It depends on how you frame it. And it depends on how strong the leader is who you work for and how receptive they are to that type of direct communication. I'd say just being open and honest about the things that you enjoy, the things that you do well. And that goes back to the self-assessment. I know that creatively, very strong, a people leader, very strong, listener, incredibly strong. Like, so it's been constant and consistent for me over the years. I know where my weak points are as well. I don't have a lot of passion around analytics, although that's a good chunk of my role. Wow. I do it and I'm good at it, but I don't love it, so I don't really give that much attention to it. I'm more of a creative. I enjoy understanding how people make decisions and how they think and how they engage and how they lead and how they succeed. So that is the sexy part of my job that gives me energy every single day. So if you can compartmentalize what you're good at, what you want to do versus the things that are developmental for you, and the things that you really don't have a lot of passion for, you will eventually, all roads will lead to that North Star that you're talking about. Like, so this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what gives me the most fulfillment and passion and purpose and clarity. I've had the good fortune of working for some of the world's prominent business leaders, both men and women, and the common denominator among all of them is they were incredibly clear about their passion, their purpose, and how they planned to exude their power. And so I've had some wonderful role models, my father included.
Speaking of role models, let's talk about mentor and sponsors.
Yes.
There's a lot of confusion around it, but I would love for you to clarify and define those roles. And then also let's talk about the people in your life who were served as mentors and sponsors who helped you climb.
Absolutely. And I would be remiss if I would sit here across from you during this interview and say that I made it all on my own. That's not true. None of us have made it on our own. And I have had some wonderful mentors and sponsors who have had nothing but my best interest at heart. So let me go back to the definition of each. I enjoy sports, so I'm going to give you a sports analogy. I would define a mentor as your personal coach or your personal trainer. This is the person that's going to help you to navigate your way, to help you to flex some of those leadership muscles, help you to acculturate into an organization, give you the lay of the land, and just making sure that all roads are leading to your success. When I think about a sponsor, however, that is your sports agent. That is the individual
close the deals.
who has influence at the table, who will negotiate and advocate for you and champion for you, who can speak to your performance and to your successes, who can speak to just who you are as an individual and how you show up in the world, but they have that decision-making wield, if you will. They can make it happen for you. So if it's a stretch assignment or if it's a promotion or what have you, they have the influence at that table to make it happen for you.
Okay.
So you need both, a mentor and a sponsor.
Sure, you need a coach and you need an agent.
Exactly. So I hope that was
very helpful.
Okay.
I think we can all understand a good sports analogy.
Okay.
Who would you refer to as your mentor? I'm sure you had several. Is there one that really stands out who helped you in your ascension?
Mm-hmm. I'd say mentors. Ted Childs.
And Ted is?
Ted is the former Chief Diversity Officer at IBM. Just a thought leader in the diversity and inclusion space. Fearless leader. Smart, respected, just everything a chief diversity officer needs to be able to have those courageous conversations and not flinch. He's just a terrific person.
Okay. And sponsor?
Sponsor, Alex Gorski.
Okay.
Alex is the chairman and CEO of Johnson & Johnson. I had an opportunity to work for Alex during our time at Novartis Pharmaceuticals, and he was the then CEO of Novartis Pharma, and I was his chief diversity officer.
So these are two really big, these are powerhouses.
Exactly.
So it's helpful to have powerhouses in your corner.
Exactly.
Who can advocate on your behalf when you're not in the room.
That's right.
And who can coach you play by play.
Exactly. Exactly. They will hold up that proverbial mirror and show you all the flaws, but all the good. You need both. Definitely need both.
How has the power of networking helped you to climb? And let's also talk about, because networking, some people I don't think understand the true meaning and concept of networking, what's effective, how you can move the needle through effective networking.
Right. You know, you're absolutely right. Everyone throws that term around a lot.
Loosely.
Loosely. And I network with purpose.
I
don't feel the need to show up at every single event. I am incredibly strategic in terms of where I show up, who I'm with, who's in my ecosystem, as I call it. So my network is my net worth. And so those individuals that are in my ecosystem, they're there for a reason. And that ecosystem can change year over year. But there needs to be some constant there. There needs to be individuals who are there for the long haul. I have both mentors and sponsors who have just been incredible champions for me over the years, who have protected me from harm. I mean, this work of diversity practice, I mean, you're in essence for lack of a better term, you're a quasi-civil rights leader. And sometimes that can pose a threat to some individuals who might not philosophically be there where you are and who don't like change. And so over the years, I've had threats by employees and others who just didn't like this work that I do for a living. And so these were individuals who've had my back, who have been champions and advocates and sounding boards, feedback mechanisms. So I use them all for a lot of different purposes. But what I will say, though, is it's a two-way or reciprocal relationship. It can't be one way. It's not about what you can get from them. There are some learning nuggets that they can collect from you, too. So there's deposits and receipts. And I've been incredibly deliberate and intentional about those individuals in my network and who have sponsored and mentored me. I've hand-selected these individuals, or they selected me. And I think you have to be very, very clear about why you want these folks to be a part of your network or to be your mentor or your sponsor. If you can't answer that question, you have no business having that relationship with that person. You're wasting their time and you're wasting your own.
That's something to really think about, because everyone wants to throw around, I'm networking, or I have a mentor, will you be my mentor, will you be my sponsor? But there has to be purpose in those relationships.
Exactly. And you don't have to be, junior to have a mentor. I've been working for 30 years in corporate America. I still call on my mentors, my sponsors, and these are individuals who have been through some things. They have that magic something that either I don't have, I'm not quite there yet. They're helping me to raise my game. So it's not like you have them one year and they're gone the next. These are relationships that you cultivate, maintain, and sustain for a lifetime. So Alex is a friend. I can say he was my boss, but now he's my friend. I remember when I was contemplating going to Ascension, and I called him and said, what do you think about this opportunity? And he said, I think it's amazing and I think you should go for it. When I was pursuing entrepreneurial ventures, I called him and said, what do you think? I'm giving up my career. This thing that I've cultivated and maintained and sustained over time, I want to throw in the towel just for a little bit. What do you think? So these are individuals that are invested in you and are your trusted advisors. We all need trusted advisors or a board of directors, and so these are my board of directors. So when my father's not available or whatever the case is, I go to my ecosystem, my network, my mentors and my sponsors.
I like that. Okay, let's talk about your pivot from corporate America to your entrepreneurial venture prior to Accenture, and what you learned from that. I know there may be some people who would be watching this interview who'd say, okay, I'm C-suite, I've worked in this position 20 years, but I'm ready to call my own shots and work for myself and develop my own something. What did you learn from that pivot from corporate America to entrepreneurial that you would want to share?
Do your homework before you make the leap. Fully understand what entrepreneurial ventures, what that means. For those of us that have had the good fortune of working for major corporations with big budgets and lots of infrastructure and resources and people.
And comfort and stability.
There's going to be some bumps in the road. That paycheck might not show up every 30 days or whatever the pay period is. Are you set up for when that happens financially? You know, I have an assistant at work. When I started my company, I was the assistant. I wore many hats. And I couldn't look to my left and right and delegate. It was my husband and I. So there are just some things that you learn about yourself as a leader. You learn about multiple business models in terms of going from multi-billion-dollar conglomerate to here you are. And how are you going to position yourself in this competitive marketplace and sell business that, the McKinseys and Bain Consulting and all these other major corporations that they also do so well? How was I going to differentiate myself from the masses? So you really I had to think long and hard about that. And how was I going to rebrand myself from executive to entrepreneur, where people would take me seriously? And what I've learned is people took me seriously. They did their homework, they studied up on me and the things that I've done over the years. And so business development was not a challenge. I had more business that I knew what to do with.
Wow,
the challenge
that's a
for me
blessing.
was I'm only one person and my husband's only one person, and so I couldn't be all things to all people. So I enjoyed my entrepreneurial ventures. I felt like I really took the time to focus on me and the things that I wanted to do. I was able to carve out time to write the book and to spend with my family. And you can't put a price tag on those things.
No, you can't. And that's the freedom of entrepreneurship.
That's right.
Entrepreneurship.
That's right.
At what point did you say to your husband, let's go into business together? Because some people say, oh, I could never work with my spouse. But you're working together successfully.
Yes.
What's the key to success as a married couple?
Communication.
Like in marriage too?
Yeah.
And in business.
Clear boundaries in terms of, so here's my role and my responsibility, and here's your role, and here's your responsibility. And the formula that worked for David and I is, he loves the behind the scenes type of things. So he ran the infrastructure of the business, from the statement of work contracts to the negotiation of contracts, all the finances, all of that back of the house administrivia. He loves that, and he's great at it. I'm not. I'm more client facing. I enjoy people. I enjoy business development. So we played well off of each other. So it's like, here's your role, here's my role, and it all worked. It worked really well. And sometimes we would cross-pollinize because he's also very good with clients as well.
Okay.
So it depended on the work that was required. If they needed me, I would show up. If they needed him, he would show up. And
you established a winning formula that worked well.
Yes.
For the Williamses.
Yes. Now every day I can't say, well, sunshine. We did have our, you clash.
Of course.
But in general, I've enjoyed working with my best friend.
Something that I thought was really cool when you got a chance to relocate rather to Switzerland.
Yes.
To work.
Yes.
So you're now corporate America, you're in Switzerland. What was that experience like?
I loved it.
Any cultural challenges, learning kind of, really you're uprooting to another place, another country. Like, what was that experience like?
Again, that was my plan. That was by design. As a child, I loved geography. And I remember pointing to the world map and saying, Mom and Dad, I'm going to live in Asia and Europe and Africa. And yeah, baby, that sounds great. But little did I know I was prophesizing my future. I've always wanted to and had an appreciation for different cultures and languages and cultural competences and nuances and all of those kinds of things. I've reveled in that. So I knew that if I were going to be not just good at what I do, but great at what I did, I needed to do it outside of the United States. So it was my intention to go global. It was my intention to lead this practice outside of the U.S.
And that was strategic in your climb.
Absolutely. So in 2006 is when my husband and I packed up our home and moved to Switzerland. I got the job. I remember Thomas Eblin called me and said, we have this wonderful opportunity for you, but you have to move to Basel, Switzerland, which is where the headquarters was. And I made that decision in less than 24 hours because David and I had talked about it prior to. And that's, again, going back to the communication. We were very clear. If the opportunity presented itself, we would go. And David would give up his stellar career at AT&T.
Wow.
22 years he spent there. And we would go. And so once that phone call came in, I was prepared and I was ready to go. So it was by my design. And I've had global roles over the years, and I've loved it. I've traveled to every continent on the planet with the exception of Antarctica. So I enjoyed my life outside the United States, living and learning from different people. And, there are a lot of expats from the U.S. living abroad.
I had to Google that when I was reading your book. I was like, what is an expat? What is an expat, Michelle?
An individual who, like me, has lived abroad on assignment with the intention to come back to the U.S. Okay. And it's really interesting. I'll tell you a funny story. My husband did not want to come back. So when we went in 2006, it was supposed to have been a 2-year assignment, 3 years. It turned into 10.
Really?
And we loved our life there. David said, I don't really want to go back. And I said, well, look, I'm not Tina Turner. I am not staying here. We are not giving up passports and staying here. I want to go back to my family. And so we came back in 2014. But loved it. Loved it. It was amazing. And I found a place to get my hair done every Saturday.
It's very important for women.
Yes, for women of color in particular.
Women of color.
Yes.
Great segue to talk a little bit more about women of color. I feel like on the ladder rungs, you're like here, and you have I feel like another step, and then you can retire.
Yeah.
As you're climbing, you've noted in your book that it was important for you to reach back, or it's important for anyone who's ascending in their career to reach back and pull someone along.
Absolutely.
Talk to me about that. Why is that important, especially for women of color?
Well, first of all, there's not many women of color at these levels, at the senior leadership level. And if you are fortunate enough to have been chosen to have a seat at that table, in my view, it is your indelible responsibility to ensure that the next generation of young women, particularly young women of color, has the opportunity to also have that seat at that table. So you will coach her, mentor her, give her experiences, stretch her, give her feedback, and making sure that she is fully equipped to have your seat at some point in time. That's what a good leader does, in my opinion. You are preparing and grooming for your succession. I do that. As soon as I walk into a place of employment, my team, they look at me like I'm crazy. It's like, oh, well, I'm preparing for my succession. It's like, well, you just got here. Well, no, I don't plan on being here forever.
Exactly.
So a good leader prepares for that and grooms that next level of individual or for that position. So I don't know. I'm comfortable in the skin that I'm in. I've had a wonderful career. I've mentored, I've sponsored, I've done all of the things that I've wanted to do. And so if I left my place of employment today, I can honestly say I can sit back and give myself that proverbial pat on the back and say, well done. You've done what you were supposed to do. My father would always say to my sisters and I, you're not here to take up space. You're here to make a difference, and it's up to you to determine what that difference is. And I figured out what that difference is.
And what is the difference?
That difference is leaving a place in better condition than when I entered, and making sure that the people that work there realize that they too, that anything is possible.
That's a great way to conclude our conversation.
Thank
Making
you.
a difference. That was not only inspirational, I think that was impactful too. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
And that concludes our interview. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have been inspired to climb and ascend in your career. I'm Lindsay Christian for Sarder TV.